My husband's family thought they were putting me in my place. For their grand luxury vacation, the one they had been planning for a year, they gave me a tiny, windowless room in the staff quarters, a room usually reserved for a maid. They wanted me to feel small, out of place, and worthless. What they didn't know, as they sipped champagne in their opulent multi-room suites, was that every single polished floor, every fresh flower arrangement, every smiling employee in that hotel ultimately answered to me. They thought they were the VIPs. They were about to find out they were merely guests in my home. The entire affair had been orchestrated by my mother-in-law, Eleanor, for months. It was a celebration of her husband's retirement, but it was truly a celebration of her own perceived status. The destination she chose was the Sterling Point Lodge, a place whose name she would drop into conversations with a casual, practiced air. "Oh, you simply must go," she'd say to her friends. "The service is just unparalleled. Of course, it's nearly impossible to get a reservation." I would sit through these planning dinners, listening to her extol the virtues of the hotel's thread count and the exclusivity of its spa, a quiet, secret smile on my face. She was describing, in glowing terms, the flagship property I had inherited from my grandmother. She was bragging about a world she was only allowed to visit, a world that I owned. The day of our arrival felt like the opening scene of a play where I was the only one who knew the ending. We pulled up the long, winding driveway, the majestic, rustic chic facade of the lodge coming into view. Valets in crisp uniforms rushed forward. Eleanor swept out of her car like visiting royalty, expecting the world to bow. And in a way, it did. That was the Sterling Point promise, after all. As we walked into the grand lobby, I had to suppress a knowing smile. The scent of pine and cedar from the massive stone fireplace was exactly as I'd specified in my last quarterly review with the management team. The vast hand-woven rug in the center of the room was from a local artisan I had personally commissioned. I saw David Chen, the general manager, a man I had spent hours with on video calls, standing near the reception desk. He caught my eye for a fraction of a second, and I gave him the slightest, almost imperceptible shake of my head. He understood immediately, his professional mask slipping back into place, as he turned his attention to the other guests. For now, I was just Isabella, Liam's quiet wife. The charade began at the check-in desk. Eleanor presented herself with a grand flourish. "The Harrison party. We have 3 of your finest suites reserved." The young woman at the desk, clearly well-rehearsed, put on a look of profound distress. "Oh, Mrs. Harrison, there seems to be a problem with the booking system. I am so terribly sorry. We have your 2 signature suites, but the 3rd, it seems to have been double booked." Eleanor launched into a magnificent performance of indignation. "Double booked? That is simply unacceptable. I booked these 6 months ago. This is a very important family celebration." My husband, Liam, knew his mother's theatrics well. The front desk manager was summoned, apologies were made, and then came the solution, delivered with a tone of grave sincerity. "We have been able to find one other room on the property. It is in our north wing. It's a bit more modest, but it is available. We can, of course, offer it at a significant discount." My sister-in-law, Jessica, who had been observing with a smug look on her face, chose this moment to chime in. "Oh, a single room. Well, I suppose that's better than sleeping in the car," she said with a laugh. She turned to me, her eyes full of fake pity. "Isabella, you won't mind, will you? You and Liam are so adaptable. Besides, how much time do you really spend in your room on vacation?" Liam's face was a thundercloud. "Absolutely not," he said, his voice low and firm. "We're not staying in a broom closet while the rest of you are in suites. Mom, this is insulting." "Don't be dramatic, Daniel," Eleanor chided, waving her hand dismissively. It's a simple booking error. We have to make do. Isabella understands. She's not one to make a fuss. All eyes turned to me. They were waiting for me to accept my place at the bottom of the family hierarchy. I could have ended it right there. A single sentence to the manager, a quiet word in his ear, and the founder's suite would have been ours in minutes. But as I looked at Eleanor's triumphant face, I saw the pathetic nature of her little power play. She needed this victory. She needed to feel superior. And I decided, in that moment, to let her have it. The fall would be so much more spectacular from a greater height. I gave Liam's arm a gentle squeeze and offered the group a calm smile. "It's all right, Liam. Don't worry about it," I said, my voice soft but steady. "Jessica's right. It's just a place to sleep. Let's not ruin the start of a wonderful family vacation over something so small." The relief on Eleanor's face was disgusting. She had won. She had successfully put me in my place. A bellhop was summoned, but instead of leading us to the grand elevators, he led us past the bustling kitchens, down a long, sterile, white-walled service corridor. He stopped at a small, unassuming door at the very end, marked simply 113B. He unlocked it and swung it open. The room was clean, but tiny, and utterly devoid of charm. A small bed was pushed against one wall, and the single tiny window looked out directly over the rumbling kitchen exhaust fans and a row of large green dumpsters. This was my room? In my hotel? I stepped inside, the worn, thin carpet rough beneath my feet, and as a door clicked shut behind me, I felt a slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. The game was on. The room was, to put it mildly, an insult. It was less a guest room and more a storage closet that had been grudgingly outfitted with the bed. The air was stuffy, thick with the smell of industrial cleaner and the faint, greasy scent of the kitchen vents just outside. The single, small window was high on the wall, offering a stunning panoramic view of a large green metal dumpster and a stack of flattened cardboard boxes. The walls were so thin I could hear the rhythmic clatter of dishes from the kitchen and the shouted conversations of the staff. The bed, when I dared to sit on it, groaned in protest. Its mattress was a landscape of hidden lumps and sorrowful dips. Liam, my husband, was pacing the 3 short steps from the door to the window, his face a thundercloud of helpless fury. He was a good man, a kind man, and his mother's casual cruelty towards me was a constant source of pain for him. "This is it. This is the last time. I don't care if it's Dad's retirement party. We are leaving. I will not let her treat you this way, Isabella. This isn't a mistake. It's a message. She did this on purpose to humiliate you." "I know," I said softly, from my perch on the lumpy bed. "Then let's go," he urged, his hands clenched into fists. "We'll go to another hotel. A better one. We'll send a note and say you weren't feeling well. I will not have you sleeping in a broom closet." I reached out and took his hand, my calmness a stark contrast to his rage. "Liam, look at me." He stopped pacing and met my eyes. "If we leave, she wins. She wants a reaction. She wants us to cause a scene so she can play the victim, the poor mother whose son's difficult wife ruined a family vacation. We would be playing her game. Right now, she thinks she has all the power." I gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "Let her think that for just a little while longer, please. For me. Let's just stay here tonight." He searched my face, looking for any sign of hurt or distress. I'm sure he found it, but beneath it, he also saw a deep, quiet resolve that he had come to recognize in me. He sighed, the anger draining out of him, replaced by a weary resignation. "Okay," he said. "For you, but I am not happy about it." He went into the tiny bathroom to splash some water on his face, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I looked around the sad little room, at the single thin towel and the generic bar of soap, and my mind drifted back to another room in another hotel decades ago. It was the memory of my grandmother, Sophia. My grandmother, the founder of the entire Sterling Point Hotel empire, had started her life in America as a maid in a grand, imposing hotel just like this one. She was an immigrant with nothing but a fierce work ethic and an almost supernatural understanding of people. She told me once that she learned everything she needed to know about business from cleaning other people's rooms. She learned that the wealthiest guests were often the most miserable and that the business travelers were often lonely. She learned that a small, thoughtful gesture, an extra pillow, a glass of water left at bedside, was worth more than all the gold leaf in the lobby. I remember being a young girl, trailing her through the hallways of her first hotel, which she bought after saving every penny for 15 years. She would let me help the housekeeping staff, teaching me how to fold the corners of the bed sheets into perfect, crisp triangles. Never trust a leader who has not scrubbed a floor, mia cara, she would tell me, her voice thick with her beautiful melodic accent. They do not understand the foundation of the house. They see the guests, but they do not see the people who make the guests comfortable. True hospitality, she would say, tapping my nose, starts here, with the dignity of this room. She built her empire on that philosophy. Sterling Point was never meant to be about snobbery or exclusion. It was meant to be a sanctuary. Her secret weapon wasn't a business strategy, it was empathy. She believed luxury wasn't a price point, it was a feeling. The feeling of being cared for, of being seen, of finding a moment of peace. And as I sat there in that cramped, forgotten room, I felt a deep, profound anger, not for myself, but for her. Eleanor, with her petty, cruel games, was desecrating my grandmother's legacy. She was using this place, a place built on a foundation of kindness and respect for all people, as a weapon to enforce her own pathetic social hierarchy. She and her daughter were exactly the kind of guests my grandmother pitied. People so blinded by status that they couldn't see the value in anything but a price tag. My secret weapon wasn't just the fact that my name was on the deed to this entire property. It was the philosophy my grandmother had instilled in me. It was the knowledge that the general manager, David Chen, a man I had handpicked, had been trained by her most trusted protege and understood her vision completely. He knew that the Sterling Point way was to treat the person in the smallest room with the same dignity as the person in the largest suite. The dull ache of humiliation in my chest was gone now, replaced by a cold, hard sense of purpose. This was no longer just a family squabble. Eleanor had made it about the very soul of my inheritance. She had judged me unworthy to sleep in a proper room in the house my grandmother had built. She had no idea that I was not just a guest, I was the guardian of that house, and I had a duty to remind her, and her entire family, what true class really looked like. My quiet acceptance was over. It was time to make a reservation for a lesson in humility. Back in the cramped, stuffy confines of room 113B, Liam's anger, which had been simmering all afternoon, finally boiled over. He paced the small strip of worn carpet, his movements caged and furious. "I can't do this, Isabella," he said, his voice a low, frustrated growl. "I can't just sit here and pretend this is okay. She's my mother. But this is cruel. It's a deliberate, calculated insult, and I feel like a coward for letting you just accept it." I sat on the edge of the lumpy bed and watched him, my own heart aching for his. He was a good man trapped in a web of familial obligation and toxicity. I waited for his anger to burn itself out, and when he finally stopped pacing and sank onto the room's single, sad chair, I spoke softly. "What would happen if we left?" I asked. "She would be furious," he admitted. "She'd call everyone, tell them I was being dramatic, that you were being difficult. She would twist it. She would make herself the victim." "Exactly." I said. And your father's retirement celebration would be ruined. This entire trip, which is meant to honor him, would become about us and your mother's drama. We would be playing her game, by her rules. The only way to win a game like that, Liam, is to refuse to play. I stood up and straightened the thin, threadbare comforter on the bed. So for tonight, we stay. We endure. We will be gracious and polite. And tomorrow, we will play a different game entirely. My game. He looked at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, but he saw the unshakable resolve on my face and simply nodded. He trusted me. Dinner that evening was an exercise in supreme self-control. We were seated in the hotel's flagship restaurant, a soaring space of exposed wood beams and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains, a restaurant whose menu I had personally approved 3 months ago. The Harrison family was at a large round table in the center of the room, a clear power position. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was in her element. "The service here is just impeccable, isn't it?" she declared loudly to the table after a waiter had refilled her wine glass. "You truly get what you pay for." Her daughter Jessica seized the opportunity. "It's all about the details," she said, looking directly at me. "Our suite is just divine. The towels are so fluffy, and we have a balcony with a fireplace. How is your room, Isabella? Is it quiet back there in the north wing?" "It's perfectly fine, thank you," I replied with a calm smile, taking a sip of water. "I do hope the service hallway isn't too noisy for you at night," Eleanor added, her face a mask of fake concern. "I know the staff starts their prep work very early, but I suppose it's a small price to pay for all of us being together." I endured it all. The passive-aggressive questions, the loud descriptions of their luxurious accommodations, the constant, subtle reminders of my place. I smiled, I nodded, I ate my perfectly cooked salmon, and I said nothing. Liam sat beside me, a coiled spring of tension, but my calm seemed to soothe him. He followed my lead, letting the insults wash over us without comment. Eleanor and Jessica, frustrated by my refusal to be baited, eventually grew bored and turned their attention to gossiping about their friends. They thought my silence was weakness. It was, in fact, the quiet gathering of strength before a storm. Later that night, back in our tiny room, the sounds of clanging pots from the kitchen below finally subsided. Liam, exhausted by the day's emotional turmoil, had fallen into a restless sleep. The digital clock on the bedside table read 1:17 a.m. The hotel was quiet. My hotel. I opened my laptop, the bright screen a stark contrast in the dim room. I bypassed the public guest network and logged directly into the Sterling Point corporate mainframe, my access absolute and unrestricted. I pulled up the schematics for the lodge, my eyes tracing the layout I knew by heart. I then accessed the live reservation manifest. I saw the Harrison party, occupying suites 401, 403, and 405. And I saw my own name, a late manual entry next to room 113B. At the very top of the list, blocked out in perpetuity for my personal use, was the jewel of the entire property, the founder's suite. My decision, which had been forming all day, now crystallized into a clear, precise plan of action. I picked up my phone, my fingers scrolling to a number saved under DC Private. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. "David Chen speaking." "David, it's Isabella," I said softly, so as not to wake Liam. There was a brief, stunned silence on the other end. "Isabella, is everything all right? I saw your name on the arrivals list, but the room number, I thought it must be a mistake." "It's not a mistake, David, but it is a situation, and I would appreciate your assistance in resolving it. Are you free to talk?" Of course, for you always. Good, I said. Here is what I would like you to do. Tomorrow morning, at precisely 10 a.m., I would like you to personally greet the Harrison party in the main lobby. That's Eleanor Harrison's group. Please inform them that as part of their VIP package, you will be giving them a private tour of the property's signature features. I could hear the faint sound of a pen scribbling on paper. I want you to show them the spa, the wine cellar, and the view from the terraced restaurant. I want them to have the full Sterling Point experience. Consider it done, he said. Conclude the tour, I continued, my voice low and even, at the Founder's Suite. Please ensure that housekeeping has it fully prepared for immediate occupancy. My husband and I will be moving our things there after the tour. I understand completely, Isabella. And David, I added the final, crucial piece of the plan. When you show them the suite, please be sure to mention that it has been prepared for a particularly valued, high-priority guest who is staying with us this weekend. Let them believe for a moment that it might be for them. Let's give them a memory they won't soon forget. A slow smile crept into his voice. Isabella, he said with a tone of deep, personal loyalty that reminded me so much of my grandmother. It would be my absolute pleasure. I ended the call and shut my laptop. I walked to the small, grimy window and looked out at the dark service alley. The game was no longer being played by Eleanor's rules. I had just taken control of the entire board. I wasn't just changing rooms. I was orchestrating a quiet, bloodless coup, a lesson in humility delivered on a silver platter. And it was going to be a beautiful morning. I awoke the next morning not to the gentle sunlight I was used to, but to the utilitarian rattle of a service cart being pushed down the hallway outside our door. The air was already thick and warm, and the incessant hum of the kitchen vents was to be my alarm clock. I glanced at Liam, still asleep beside me, his face etched with the frustrated frown even in slumber. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt for putting him through this. But then I remembered the cold, dismissive look on his mother's face, and my guilt was instantly replaced by a steely resolve. Today was not about revenge. It was about reestablishing the truth. We met the family in the grand lobby at 9:30. They were already assembled, sipping coffee from delicate porcelain cups near the massive stone fireplace. Eleanor and Jessica were dressed in expensive, matching tennis whites, looking for all the world like they owned the place. They looked rested, smug, and utterly superior. "Ah, there you are," Eleanor called out as we approached, her voice a little too loud. "Did you two manage to get any sleep at all? I was so worried the staff noise would keep you up." "It was fine," I said with a placid smile. "We slept like rocks." Jessica chimed in, a cruel little smirk playing on her lips. "I'm sure. A small dark room can be quite womb-like. We, on the other hand, barely slept a wink. The sunrise from our balcony was just too spectacular to miss." Liam opened his mouth to retort, but at that exact moment a figure of serene authority emerged from a nearby office. It was David Chen, the general manager. Looking immaculate in a perfectly tailored suit, his posture exuding a quiet confidence. He moved directly towards our group, his face a mask of professional warmth. "Mrs. Harrison," he began, addressing Eleanor with a polite bow of his head. "A pleasure. I trust your first night with us was exceptional?" "It was divine, David, simply divine." "Excellent," he said. "To thank you for your patronage and as a small apology for the booking error yesterday, the hotel would like to offer your party a private complimentary tour of our signature features this morning, if you are amenable. I would be honored to lead it myself." Eleanor's face lit up with triumph. She shot a look at me, a look that said, "See, this is how important people are treated." "Why, David, we would be absolutely delighted," she exclaimed. The tour that followed was a masterclass in performative luxury. David Chen led us through the resort with a quiet, practiced grace, his every word designed to impress. We saw the tranquil marble-lined spa where he described a signature treatment involving volcanic clay and orchid-infused oils. "I'll have to book one," Jessica had whispered loudly. "Isabella, it's probably out of your price range, but you should see if they have a simple polish." He took us down to the cavernous, temperature-controlled wine cellar, a library of priceless vintages from around the world. He spoke of rare Burgundies and investment-grade Bordeaux. He offered them a taste of a particularly fine vintage, and Eleanor had swirled her glass, proclaiming its notes of oak and subtle despair with the air of a seasoned sommelier, though I knew for a fact she preferred sweet Moscato. Throughout the tour, I remained in the background, a quiet observer. I listened as Eleanor and Jessica asked loud, uninformed questions, trying to showcase their worldliness. I simply watched, a faint, knowing smile on my lips, my calmness seeming to unnerve them more than any argument could have. Finally, David led us to a private, gilded elevator at the far end of the main lodge. "And now," he said, his voice taking on a new level of reverence, "for our final stop." The elevator ascended in silence, opening onto a single, hushed, private floor. Before us stood a pair of magnificent, hand-carved double doors. "This," David announced, "is the heart and soul of Sterling Point Lodge. It is named for our founder. This is the Founder's Suite." He explained its history, its exclusivity, how it was reserved for visiting royalty, for world leaders, for the select few. Eleanor and Jessica were practically vibrating with the mixture of awe and self-importance. To be here, to be seeing this, was the ultimate validation of their status. "We rarely show this suite," David Chen continued, producing a heavy, ornate key card. "But we have been preparing it all morning for a particularly valued VIP who was visiting with us this weekend. I thought you might appreciate a glimpse." Eleanor gave Jessica a triumphant, conspiratorial glance. This was it, the grand gesture, a complimentary upgrade to the best room in the house. Jessica could barely contain her glee. "Oh, David, you shouldn't have," she gushed, already picturing herself on the private terrace. "This is just too much." David Chen inserted the key card. The lock clicked open with a satisfyingly heavy sound. He pushed open the grand double doors, revealing a space that was less a hotel room and more a private palace. Sunlight streamed through 20-foot-high windows, illuminating a grand living room with a concert piano, original works of art on the walls, and beyond, a sprawling private terrace with an infinity pool that seemed to spill into the mountain range itself. The family gasped in unison. They stepped inside, their faces masks of pure, unadulterated awe. As they wandered, lost in their wonder, David Chen took a step back into the hallway. He turned not to Eleanor or Jessica, but directly to me. He walked past them as if they were invisible, his professional smile still perfectly in place, but his eyes holding a new, deeper level of respect. He stopped directly in front of me, in front of Liam, in front of the entire, stunned Harrison family. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence of the opulent suite with the clarity of a diamond. "Mrs. Isabella," he said, with a slight deferential bow of his head, "I trust your new accommodations will be more to your liking. On behalf of the entire Sterling Point staff, I want to personally and sincerely apologize for the inexcusable error with your room last night. It will not happen again." He then gestured to the palatial suite behind him. "Your luggage has already been brought up. Welcome home." The general manager's words, "welcome home," echoed in the cavernous, silent suite. They landed with the force of a physical blow, not upon me, but upon my husband's family. The air, which moments before had been filled with their gasps of awe and desire, was now thick with a stunning, suffocating silence. It was a silence so profound I could hear the frantic pounding of my own heart. I watched, as if in slow motion, as the full weight of the revelation descended upon my mother-in-law. Eleanor's face, which had been alight with smug triumph, seemed to crumble from within. Her proud matriarchal posture collapsed, her shoulders slumping as if under an immense, invisible weight. The blood drained from her face, leaving her expensive makeup looking like a garish, painted mask on a woman made of chalk. Her perfectly lipsticked mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no sound emerged. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a dawning, abject horror. It was the look of a person who had not just made a social blunder, but had committed a mortal sin against the very god of status she worshipped every single day. Beside her, Jessica's reaction was a faster, more frantic burn. First, a nervous, sputtering laugh, a desperate attempt to frame this as some elaborate, bizarre joke. That's very funny, she stammered, looking at Mr. Chen. But when she saw the deadly serious, respectful expression on his face as he looked at me, her laughter died in her throat, replaced by a gasp of pure, selfish terror. She was not just embarrassed, she was realizing that she had spent the last 24 hours relentlessly mocking the most powerful person she had ever met. My father-in-law, a man who had remained largely silent through the drama, simply sank onto the edge of an ornate sofa, his face a mask of weary resignation. He looked at his wife, then at me, and slowly shook his head, a silent acknowledgement of her catastrophic misjudgment. It was Liam who finally shattered the spell. A low chuckle escaped his lips, then another, until he burst into a loud, full-throated laugh of pure, unadulterated joy. The sound echoed through the silent, opulent room, a joyous cannon blast tearing through the thick fog of tension. He wrapped a strong arm around my shoulders, pulling me into his side. "Well, honey," he said, his voice ringing with mirth and pride as he surveyed the palatial suite, "I have to say, this is a bit of an upgrade from room 113B. His laughter was a permission slip for me to finally act. I was no longer the quiet, slighted daughter-in-law. I was the host. With the grace I didn't know I possessed, I turned to my frozen in-laws. "Please," I said, my voice calm and welcoming, "make yourselves at home. Can I get anyone a drink from the bar? I believe my grandmother kept the single malt in the crystal decanter on the left." My offer of hospitality was the final, quiet twist of the knife. We stayed for 3 more days, and those 3 days were the most excruciatingly awkward of the Harrison family's collective life. They were trapped. They couldn't leave without admitting defeat, but staying meant living inside their own monumental humiliation. They were my guests now, in every sense of the word. They spoke in hushed tones, they avoided my eyes, they complimented the thread count of the guest room sheets. The power inversion was absolute, and often comical. At the pool, an attendant rushed past them to bring me a private, shaded cabana with complimentary fruit platters without me even asking. At restaurants, the head chef came out to personally ask if my meal was to my liking, while my in-laws were attended to by a junior waiter. The entire staff, from the valets to the housekeepers, now treated me with a mixture of professional deference and a warm personal respect. They knew I was the founder's granddaughter, and my quiet, unpretentious demeanor seemed to earn their loyalty in a way Eleanor's demanding nature never could. On our final morning, as we were packing, Eleanor appeared at the door of our suite. She stood there, twisting her hands, looking small and defeated. "Isabella," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I feel I must say, I seem to have misjudged the situation." It was the apology of a CEO admitting a catastrophic business error, not of a mother-in-law admitting she had been cruel. It was an apology for her tactical mistake, not for her lack of heart. But it was all she was capable of, and it was enough. "Yes, you did, Eleanor," I said softly, without malice. "But the past is the past. What matters is how we move forward as a family, with respect, on all sides." She nodded mutely and fled. That evening, Liam and I stood on the private terrace of the Founder's Suite, looking out at the endless sea of stars over the dark mountains. "I've never been more proud of you," he said, pulling me close. "You handled that with more grace than they deserved." I leaned my head against his shoulder, finally feeling the full weight of the weekend. My Nana always said that true class isn't about the room you stay in. It's about how you treat the people who are cleaning it. The tiny, sad maid's room hadn't been an insult, I realized. It had been a gift. It had been a perfect lens through which to see the true character of my new family. The vindication wasn't about moving into this palace of a suite. It was the quiet, profound satisfaction of knowing that I had honored my grandmother's legacy. I had reminded a group of people who only understood the language of money and status that the ultimate luxury, the one thing you can never buy, is dignity. The ultimate story of not judging a book by its cover. What do you think was going through Eleanor's mind for the rest of that vacation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of epic quiet revenge, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe for more daily stories where the underestimated come out on top. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.